The Iroquois Theatre opened on November 23, 1903, and was located at 24 West Randolph Street. It had 3 audience levels and had a capacity of 1,602 people. It was hailed as one of the best theaters in the country, and it was said that few theaters in America could rival its architectural perfections. The new theater was advertised as being absolutely fireproof, despite a Chicago Fire Department captain who had previously went on a tour of the building and stated that there were no extinguishers, sprinklers, alarms, telephones, or water connections. The theater opened on November 23, 1903. Shortly afterwards, on Wednesday, December 30, 1903, the theater was playing a musical called Mr. Bluebeard, a play starring one of the most famous entertainers at the time, Eddie Foy. That day for the matinee, the house was not only packed to its capacity of 1,600, but was overflowing into the aisles with 2,200 patrons, most of whom were women and children. At 3:15 p.m., at the beginning of the second act, a group of the actors were performing the song, "In the Pale Moonlight," with the stage illuminated by blue-tinted spotlights to set the mood for the night scene. Sparks from an arc light ignited a curtain, most likely as a result of an electrical short circuit. Several stagehands tried to douse the fire, but it quickly spread to the gallery high above the stage. There, several highly flammable painted canvas scenery flats were hung. The stage manager tried frantically to lower the asbestos fire curtain, but it got hung up on the wires. Soon it started to engulf the building. As Eddie Foy later recalled, the crowd was beginning to run towards the doors and already showing signs of a stampede. Those on the lower floor were not so badly frightened as those in the more dangerous balcony and gallery. Up there, they were falling into panic. I stood perfectly still, and when addressing the audience, spoke slowly, knowing that these signs of self-possession have a calming effect on a crowd. Those on the lower floor heard me, and seemed to be reassured a little, but up above, and especially in the gallery, I could see them surging, fighting, milling about in the flickering light, a horde of maniacs. Within 8 minutes, over 600 people, mostly women and children, were dead. Foy said after the fire, "The stairways were one long mass of bodies, and wherever turns or landings caused a worse jam, they were piled 7 or 8 feet deep. Firemen and police confronted a sickening task in disentangling them. An occasional body still breathing faintly was drawn from the heaps, but most of these were terribly injured. The heel prints on the dead faces mutely testified to the cruel fact that human animals stricken by terror are as mad and ruthless as stampeding cattle. Many bodies had the clothes torn from them, and some had the flesh trodden from their bones. I had no sleep that night. Newspaper reporters were begging me for interviews. Friends were calling me by telephone and wiring me. I was too excited to sleep, even if I had had the opportunity. My nerves did not subside to normal pitch for weeks afterwards." The building was later reopened as the Colonial Theatre, which was demolished in 1925. Then in 1926 the Oriental Theatre was built in its spot. In 2019, the theatre was renamed the Nederlander Theatre, and is still in operation today. Behind the theatre is an alley. It has been called by many the Death Alley, because it is there that most of the hauntings have taken place, including children crying, and visions of spirits wandering through. Some have experienced strange sounds and voices when nobody is around. Also in the alley, the corpses of the burned victims were piled and arranged to be eventually removed. Others have felt cold spots and feel they have been touched by unseen hands. People have reported ghost-like images on photos taken in the alley, and shadow people in the theater building. Former Saturday Night Live player Anna Gasteyer appeared on the biography channel Celebrity Ghost Stories, saying she'd experienced haunting moments in the theater, while performing as Elphaba in the play Wicked. In 1837, the state of Illinois gave Chicago a parcel of land outside the city limits to use as a burial ground. The land was located in what is now the southern edge of Lincoln Park. From 1843 until 1859, it served as Chicago's city cemetery, including many family-owned plots. It included Potter's Field as well as a Catholic and Jewish cemetery. There were thousands of burials in the cemetery, a vast amount due to cholera outbreaks. During a 6-day period in July of 1854, More than 200 cholera victims were buried in the Potter's Field. A doctor at the time, named John H. Rauch, began writing about the dangers of the cemetery. Because the grounds were so near the lake, and below the water table, the bacteria from the bodies were at risk of seeping into the water supply. So in 1869, the city officials passed control of the cemetery grounds, along with the northern 50 acres parcel not being used, to the Lincoln Park Commissioners. The park commissioners decided to relocate the bodies elsewhere. The process was to start moving the bodies until October 8 of 1871, the night that the Great Chicago Fire hit. Because of the fire, much of the cemetery and virtually all of the markers were destroyed. Many bodies were lost and unaccounted for. The exact number of bodies left there is unknown, but one researcher estimates that there were 10,000 forgotten graves. This includes the nearly 4,000 Confederate soldiers who died at Camp Douglas, and were buried in Potter's Field. It is believed that they're under what is now the baseball fields. In 1998, a part of the park was excavated for the Chicago History Museum's parking facility, and the remains of 81 individuals were uncovered. Since then, this area has been known as a paranormal hotspot. One of the most haunted areas in Lincoln Park is the zoo. Built in 1868 on a parcel of 35 acres, it is one of the oldest and largest zoos in the country. It is not uncommon for a visitor or member of the zoo staff to see people in Victorian dress, walking around the property, seemingly not aware of the fact that over 100 years have passed since they've died. One woman is often seen in a white dress, and often manifest in and around the Lion's House. She also is seen in the ladies' room mirrors, and seems to disappear when someone tries to make contact. Often mysterious footsteps are heard, disembodied voices, slamming doors, photographic anomalies, and flickering lights, and can be experienced in different parts of the zoo. Many have reported negative energy that have made people physically ill. Strange voices have been captured on EVP throughout the area, especially near the primate exhibit. Many believe that the ghosts are the souls from nearby suicides. Between 1894 and 1919, a bridge was located across the lagoon, near the zoo's parking lot. Known as the Suicide Bridge, it is estimated that between 50 and 100 people have killed themselves by jumping off or hanging themselves from the bridge. Bachelor's Grove Cemetery, located in Chicago's southwest suburbs, is a small cemetery, only 1 acre in size. The cemetery was unofficially started in 1834, when German immigrant workers killed while working on the Illinois and Michigan Canal were reportedly buried at the spot. Over the years, hundreds of people were laid to rest there, with the last being Robert Shields in 1989, who was cremated and buried on the family plot. The site has a long and mysterious history. The site is often reported to have been a dumping ground for victims of Chicago's organized crime families of the 1920s and 1930s. In the 1960s and 1970s, desecration and vandalism was common in the cemetery. Many stones were maliciously broken, defaced, spray-painted, and stolen. It is believed that many of the missing stones have ended up at the bottom of a nearby quarry pond. It is also reported that satanic rituals have been performed there, as well as murders and reported suicides. One famous report is of a phantom farmhouse. The building is said to almost always appear as a white homestead with wooden columns, and a porch swing on the front porch, and a lantern burning in the window. It is often seen floating, and when someone approaches it, it starts to shrink, getting smaller with each step until it disappears completely. Another regular encounter is that of the Madonna, also called the White Madonna or the White Lady. It is a young woman dressed in white and often carrying a baby. Others include a farmer and his plow horse, who were both victims of drowning during a plowing accident, and had their bodies dragged to their deaths into the nearby wetlands. The horse rushed into the lagoon without reason, dragging the farmer to his death with it. It is often reported you can still see him plowing along the banks. Reports of a woman sitting on a grave, a dog who appears at the entrance only to disappear when someone tries to approach it. Encounters with a two-headed creature emerging from the lagoon. Figures dressed in robes, believed to be monks, are often seen throughout the cemetery. It has been the location of many paranormal investigations, including it being featured on an episode of Ghost Adventures in 2012. The SS Eastland was a passenger ship based in Chicago, and used for tours. The ship, which was built in 1902, was nicknamed the Speed Queen of the Great Lakes. It also had a history of being unstable, nearly capsizing on more than one occasion. On the morning of July 24, thousands of people gathered for the 5th annual picnic for the employees of the Western Electric Company. The picnic was scheduled to begin with a boat ride from Chicago across Lake Michigan to Michigan City, Indiana. About 6:30 a.m. passengers began boarding the Eastland, one of 5 boats chartered for the excursion. The other boats were the Theodore Roosevelt, the Petoskey, the Racine, and the Rochester. By 7:10 a.m., the ship had reached her capacity of 2,572 passengers. By 7:25 a.m. the Eastland had been righted several times, but it then began its roll. Within 2 short minutes it was leaning to port at least 25 degrees, and water started entering the ship. At 7:30 a.m., the Eastland rolled onto its side. Onlookers as well as nearby boats rushed to aid the passengers, and the police and fire departments arrived soon after. Despite such efforts, hundreds were crushed or drowned just a few yards from shore. A total of 844 passengers and 4 crew members died in the disaster. The ship was resting in only 20 feet of water. It was raised on August 14, 1915. It was sold to the U.S. Navy, and was converted into a gunboat, and in 1918 it entered service as the USS Wilmette. But World War I ended before it saw any combat. The Wilmette was then used as a training vessel until 1945, when it was sold for scrap. Since that deadly day it has been the reported site of many paranormal encounters. Shortly after the disaster, Chicago officials set up a makeshift morgue at the 2nd Regiment Armory. The armory is now the home of Harpo Studios, site of the Oprah Winfrey Show and several other productions. According to a former Harpo security guard, a woman haunts the studio, and several workers have been scared by crashes and bumps occurring usually at night. Doors would open and slam shut. I'd try to chase down the source, and hear children laughing and giggling in the building. Also the sighting of a woman in a long gray dress, who walked the corridors and then mysteriously vanished into the wall. There were several occasions when this woman was spotted, but each time she was approached, she always disappeared. It has been reported that pedestrians walking past the disaster site have heard sounds of loud splashing, often accompanied by startling screams and moans. Also, customers of riverside cafes that line the disaster site say they have witnessed quick surges of water that flood the river walk. People walking through the area have said they have seen many strange occurrences, which include seeing unusual activity in the water. Upon closer inspection, while looking into the water, they claim to see reflections of faces with lifeless eyes staring up at them.